So we're back, and we continue with module one with the next issue that I think we need to sort out before we even move further. And this is the issue of moral minimalism. No, so why ethics is more than just what you feel is right. No, or well, moral minimalism. No, it's a form of moral minimalism. I asked you very kindly to read chapters 1 to 5 before finally diving into the lectures in module 1, no? And the entire modules 2 to 5 are actually on moral minimalism, no? But let me explain each of these. Basically, not naman in more details, no? But let me attempt to give you some more clarity on what I actually asked you to read. No? But I hope that you found the text easy to understand and digest. No? So let's begin with the first. And this is, uh, well, some form of exercise muna. No? So how shall we deal with ethical dilemmas when, number one, the interlocutors come from different cultural backgrounds? No? You're in a discussion with people of different cultural backgrounds, and you find yourselves in strongly different positions. Number two, those who have strong feelings about the issue. You may not be of different cultural backgrounds, but you all have strong feelings about the issue. Sometimes divergent feelings about an issue. Three, maybe people who carry a deep religious conviction with them. Let's just agree to disagree. No? Kasi iba talaga yung paniniwala namin. Or four, you're discussing an issue with people who are always looking after their own good. No? Di pwede eh. No? I mean, I don't think it's good for me. No? So sometimes it can get frustrating, di ba? Frustrating to deal with people like this. No? You'd rather not engage. No? And when we try to imagine cases like this, parang gusto mo na lang sarilinin yung iyong paniniwala. What to do, no? Especially when the issues that you need to sort out with the people that we enumerated are actually of primacy, no? Hindi pwede that you just stop discussing because you need to make a decision. So, according to Van Wyck, 1990, these people, the ones that we mentioned, or not mentioned but characterized in the previous slide, they are called minimalists. No? And how do we characterize minimalists? No? Sabi ni Van Wyck, and I quote, "As long as I don't choose to be a drug dealer or a bank robber, it is all right for me. I have a liberty right, no, to choose whatever career I feel like without bothering my head about all of those questions. I don't have any duty to think about those other questions, and it's nobody else's business. Other people should not have opinions on the subject, and if they do, they should keep their opinions to themselves." This is just one example of how Van Wyck uh, characterizes, a moral minimalist. Someone who does not care about the more important questions. Tama ba? Ano ba talaga yung mabuting gawin? No? A moral minimalist does not seem to care. No? Ano ba yung uh, estudyante na ganito ang iniisip? No? Kasi ang tanong dyan pala, example na yan, what would you want to be? No? So, why is a student like this akin to the interlocutors that you met earlier? No? Yung apat, no? People who care only about what their cultures tell them to do, or a person who only cares about what he feels, or another person who only thinks of his or her religion. At yung pang-apat, no, yung ang pakialam lang niya, what is in it? What is in it for me? What is in it for me, no? What benefit will I get from it? No, they're all minimalists, no? Yun nga yung sabi ko. No, and Daniel Callahan, no, has a very good uh, definition or at least explanation of what moral minimalism is. Daniel Callahan claims, no, claims yan na wala yung S, that all of the cases above can be considered moral minimalism. And according to him, and again I quote, what has been that morality, referring to moral minimalism? Sabi niya, it has been one that stressed the transcendence of the individual over the community. The need to tolerate all moral viewpoints, the autonomy of the self as the highest human good, the informed consent contract as the model of human relationships. No? Marami sa atin, no? Yan lang yung ethics ngayon, sapat na, no? If the other person agrees, no? Even if the action might potentially hurt the other person, pumayag siya eh, no? So there's nothing wrong with that, no? Pero wala nga ba talagang mali, no? Or you'd say the transcendence of the individual over the community. Who cares, no? So long as I feel that this is the right action for me, no? The need to tolerate all moral viewpoints. Ano mo, iba-iba kasi tayo eh. So why don't we just agree to disagree? No? So these are all forms of moral minimalism. Why is it called minimalism? No? Well, we are obliged under the most generous reading of a minimalist ethic only to honor our voluntarily undertaken family obligation, for example, to keep our promises and to respect contracts freely entered into with other freely consenting adults. Beyond those minimum standards, we're free to do as we like, guided by nothing other than our private standards of good and evil. In other words, it's called minimalism because minimalists are contented with minimum standards of morality. Okay na to. No, I don't have to think of what is really right or what is really good. Okay na to. Wala naman akong natatapakan. It's not as if I am violating someone else's autonomy. No, I have asked for this person's voluntary assent. No, ako ay ito lang naman ang aking pinangako. No, pinangako ko lang not to hurt you, no? Pero kung I do something else, no, that may be offensive to you, hindi na yun kasama, no? Pwede ko nang gawin yun kasi hindi ko naman pinangako. So this is what we mean by minimalism, no? Ang sinabi ko lang naman sa kanya, tara, labas tayo, no? Pumayag siya. Hindi ko naman sinabi na wala akong gagawing masama, no? So in other words, he or she consented. So whatever happens here, wala na akong responsibility doon. So this is minimalism, no? Reducing morality into bare minimum, no? So normally there are 4 theories that are considered minimalists, and the first one is cultural relativism, no? Nabasa niyo namang maigi yan from Rachel's. At napakaganda ng discussion dyan ni Rachel's, no? And he started by saying that the cultural relativism as a theory owes much of its theoretical support from the cultural differences argument, no? That different cultures have different moral codes, and therefore there is no objective truth and morality. Because different cultures have different ways of conceiving right and wrong, ibig sabihin, wala talagang objective na tama at mali. Kasi iba-iba, no? But is this sound? And according to Rachel's, I don't think this argument is sound, no? And the examples that he gave are Herodotus, no? on the Melanesians of Papua New Guinea and the Wari people of Brazil versus Athenians. No, these examples, according to Rachel's, show us that different cultures may have different ways of living life, but they do not in any way support the claim that there is no objective truth. Bakit? Because, sabi nga ni Rachel's, the conclusion does not follow from the premise. What is the premise? That different people believe in different things, that they have different ways of conceiving good. But the conclusion in cultural differences argument asserts that walang tama at mali dahil iba-iba. The conclusion, according to Rachel's, that concerns what is really the case is not supported by the premise. No? Magandang example niya dyan, yung the earth being flat. No? The example was borrowed from Stace. No? No matter what you think, no? Kung ang paniniwala mo the earth is flat or the earth is oblate spheroid, it will not change reality as it were. In the same manner, according to Rachel's, different people may believe in different things when it comes to morality, but difference in beliefs does not in any way dictate what is really the case. Now, what is really morally good or morally right? No? And I guess that makes sense. No? So, what is the or what are the consequences of taking cultural relativism seriously? No? Kasi what Rachel's wanted to do here was to show you that one, the theory on which the cultural relativist school is built, it's logically invalid. No? Yun yung cultural differences argument. Pero number two, even the consequences, if you take cultural relativism seriously, problematic din. Bakit? Number one, we could no longer say that the customs of other societies are morally inferior to our own. If cultural relativism is actually true, then what do we say of moral practices done in the past or that may be done in the future which are considered morally inferior? Kaya ka nga may mga actions na tinuturing na mali because you feel that not all actions are of the same moral status. If you take cultural relativism seriously, all of these different moral actions will be considered of the same moral status. Pare-parehas lang na tama. So, ibig sabihin, the genocide that was done against the Jews, that victimized the Jews, parehas lang pala yan ng moral status sa iba pang ginagawa nating kamalian. Halimbawa, kung ako ay nagsinungaling tungkol sa hirap ng quiz that you will have for Module 1, yung bang gravity of my moral liability, parehas nung ginawa sa mga Jews nung World War II. Well, if cultural relativist ka, you'd probably say, oh naman, no, parehas lang yun. No? Hindi naman nga mali yung ginawa nila. They did that. The Germans did that because they had a good reason, for example. No? And this might not sit well with many of us, no? Even considering our common sense. No? We know that some actions are morally inferior to our own actions. Number two, we could decide whether actions are right or wrong just by consulting the standards of our society. Like in the case of racism or apartheid, no? If you go by cultural relativism, you can just say, well, that was the standard of society at that time. It was okay to treat people of a different race differently, no? Because during that time, they were not recognized as co-equals. But can we actually accept that? No? That a particular period of time, no, or a particular standard of society should be the only basis for right and wrong. If a particular society thinks that this is what's right, would you readily accept that to be right just on the basis of that particular society's mores? Number three, the idea of moral progress is called into doubt. No? We already know that there's been so much advancement in other fields of the society, like feminism, the feminist movement. If you consider cultural relativism true, then wala palang moral progress. What was considered right then, when women were considered inferior, tama pala yun. And what is considered right now, which is women empowerment, tama rin yun. So walang moral progress, parehas lang tama. It's just the case that it was different then and it's different now. And are we willing to say that there was no such thing as progress in the case of women, for example? Here is another question that you might want to think about. What if you're a part of more than one group or society? Say, for example, being a Filipino American. And what if your groups, or societies compel you to choose between two moral positions? How would you then decide if cultural relativism were true? Paano yun? Parehas na lipunan mong magkaiba mag-isip, parehas na tama. And suppose intolerance is the ethics of your society. Should you tolerate it? It's a blatant contradiction. Cultural relativism tells you that all cultural moral positions are correct. And what if your society considers intolerance as your ethical practice? Dapat ba i-tolerate mo yung intolerance? Hindi ba the mere fact that it's called intolerance, paano mo ito tolerate? That's a contradiction. Of course, we have seen the problems with cultural relativism. Now, I'm sure that you still have your confusions that we can clarify once we meet in our synchronous session this week. But I hope that for the most part, you get the point why cultural relativism is problematic. But we also recognize that while it is problematic as a theory, there is really less disagreement than it seems. I think the reason there is because of the difference is in our belief systems, not in our values. In the previous lecture, I told you about values. And the values support our reason. And for the most part, the difference is not in our values, but in our belief system. But if only we will look closely, there are more similarities than differences. Other values must be more or less universal. For example, truth-telling, reverence for life. These are universal values. While the manifestations of truth-telling and reverence for life may be different in different cultures, but the core values are one and the same. There are some moral rules that all societies must have in common because those rules are necessary for society to exist. Oftentimes, we only emphasize the differences, but these moral rules that are universal are rules that we have in common because they are foundational in order for a fully functioning society to continue existing. Why then are people reluctant to criticize other cultures? Bakit po ganun? Bakit ayaw nating i-point out yung pagkakamali ng iba kung may mga tama naman pala at mali talaga? I think we should notice that there is a difference between judging a cultural practice to be deficient and thinking that we should announce the fact. Conduct a campaign, apply diplomatic pressure, or send in the army. Sabi ni Rachel's, iba yung alam mo sa sarili mo that another cultural practice is wrong. And iba rin yung you shove it into their throats. And I think that the goal really of ethics is for our self-awareness, that we know when something is right or something is wrong, and not so much on whether we can correct other people in their concept of right and wrong. No, and of course, people feel that they should be tolerant, but there is nothing in the nature of tolerance that requires you to say that all beliefs, all religions, all social practices are equally admirable or they're equally correct. On the contrary, if you did not think that some are better than others, there would be nothing for you to tolerate. We use the term tolerate because we know that some things of um, different epistemological or even moral status as as ours. No, we tolerate them because we know that while their positions may not be correct, no, but the globalized world compels us to respect other people's belief. No, people may be reluctant to judge because they do not want to express contempt for the society being criticized. To condemn a particular practice is not to say that the culture is on the whole contemptible or that it is generally inferior to any other culture, including one's own. No, we don't want to be judgmental, sabi na. No? So what can we learn from cultural relativism? Well, number one, it warns us about the danger of assuming that all our preferences are based on some absolute rational standard. They're not. Many of our practices are merely peculiar to our society. And I guess that one cultural relativism got right. Number two, it teaches us to have open mind by stressing that our moral views can reflect the prejudices of our society, provides an antidote for dogmatism. It makes you realize, baka naman the action that our society is considering to be right, no, is not necessarily right for everyone, no, or that maybe we should revisit whether our conception of right and wrong is actually valid, no, for all. So I think that's all now for cultural relativism. In the next lecture, we will talk about this second minimalist theory. Okay, so let's pause a bit